Well, welcome everyone. My name is Paul White. I'm the Vice President of Member Services at the Foundation. It's great to have everyone here. As I just said, we have normally held our annual members meeting, which is a requirement of our bylaws, but it's actually a very useful thing for us to do, to get together with our members and share what we're working on, what our plans are, and to get feedback from our members. So we appreciate you all showing up. We are also going to record this session. We'll make these recordings available afterwards. So if you're watching this as a recording, welcome. And if you have questions, please reach out at any time and we'll get them answered for you. We have a very busy agenda with many of our leadership team kind of talking about the initiatives that we have within the foundation. So you'll see each of us actually covering different sections of what's happening within the foundation. And hopefully these things are of value to you as members. We've also asked Philipp Struss to come and speak a little bit about the what brought him to Eclipse and how he's engaged with us as a case study. So thank you, Philipp, for joining us. As noted on the bottom of the slide, we welcome questions in the Zoom chat. We're going to ask everyone to stay muted just so we can get through all the material. There is a lot of it, but we will try to answer any questions in the chat, or each of the speakers can answer questions at the end of their section. And again, if you're watching this on a recording, just reach out at Eclipse Foundation and we will respond to you as quick as we can. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Milinkovich, our Executive Director, and let him provide his update.
All right, thanks, Paul, and welcome everybody. Thank you for making the time. Yeah, I think I've met a lot of people on the call over the years, but for those that I haven't met, welcome, and it's a pleasure to meet you virtually. So lots of things to talk about. Let's start off with our membership update. Actually, I'm gonna have to do the arithmetic in my head. We're currently well over 300 members, approaching 325 if I remember correctly. So we're obviously very happy about that. And you'll notice that there's a sort of a little bit of a step function there that happened at the very beginning of 2020, and that's influx of membership that came into us from a compliments of our friends and colleagues at the Open Hardware Group, which is a partnership that we have with a group that's doing open specifications for processor designs based on the RISC-V instruction set architecture. But we're obviously very pleased with the membership growth that we're seeing this year, and in particular, given the pandemic and COVID-19 and all the things that are going on in the world, continuing to see strong revenue growth, but strong membership growth and participation is obviously key. So these are our strategic members. Not in any particular order, near as I can tell, but these are the members that are funding the big dollars plus putting resources into our projects that help really drive our community and our foundation forward. There's been a couple of new ones there since the beginning of the year. DLR and Fraunhofer Focus both came in at the beginning of the year, and we talked about it at EclipseCon. When we'll get through this restructuring thing that I'll be talking about in a moment, but as we move to Belgium, we have an agreement already in place that Daimler TSS, their IT subsidiary, will be joining as a strategic member as well. On the committer side, we're a total of 1,630 committers. As of September 30th, and so seeing over the year, seeing some growth there, and obviously very pleased about that. We were seeing steady growth in the committers. I probably should have done this chart to go back a couple of years, but a year or two ago we crossed the 1,500 committer population, and we continue to see steady growth there. This is a bit of an eyeball chart, but we just wanted to call out and provide some graphical thank you for all of the new members that we've had since the last annual general members meeting. And so I'm not going to go through all of these because we would be here all day, but I just wanted to say and thank you and extend a warm welcome to the many companies that have joined the Eclipse Foundation over the last 12 months. All right, so I think actually, and just to mention in passing that I believe we've had a total of 81 new members join the Eclipse Foundation since the beginning of the year, which is obviously a great endorsement of our organization and our foundation. All right, so moving now to some news about membership. So we have been doing a bunch of work around our corporate restructuring. And in terms of what's going on with Eclipse Foundation US, for which this is the annual general meeting, the Eclipse Board of Directors unanimously approved a number of changes to our bylaws and our membership agreement. And we held a vote of the membership at large throughout the month of September. And those changes were approved by 97% of those who cast the vote. We did hit quorum, and we thank all of those who voted. Your participation and support are very much appreciated. So that was a significant amount of effort towards the end of Q3, and just again, thanks to everybody who took the time to vote. So changing now to financial update. So we started off the year with a 2020 budget that was suggesting we were going to get $6.9 million in total revenue. The bulk of that revenue is in membership dues and working group participation fees. That's the vast majority of that. And with a expense line of 6.9 million, so then break even was the expected budget. As we've gone through the year, obviously there's been an enormous number of changes that have happened around the world since when we did the budget, which would have been, Q4 2019. And as we did our forecast based on where we are, and this is a fairly recent forecast, we just did this in August and it was approved by the board in September. We are looking at a total revenue of 6.7 million, expenses of 6.6 million, showing a small surplus at the end of the year of about 100,000. The big change on the expense line, of course, is, as I'm sure many of you are aware in your own businesses and your own lives, we saved a lot of money on travel. So that's one of the biggest changes on the expense side. So I think it's important to note that the foundation continues to strive to operate on a break-even basis. That's always been part of our mission, and we are looking forward to having a small surplus, and which is, as you can see from a few years past, we ran some small deficits. So we're obviously very happy about that. And if you look at the 2019 actual, we're showing about $1 million more revenue than what we had in 2019, which is obviously a significant growth. And a lot of that is really driven by working groups. So we've had, and others will be talking about that later as we go through the day. So one of the things I really wanted to spend a little bit more time in, some of this, for some of you that attended our town halls and so on and other meetings, this will be a bit of a refresher. But since this is such a fundamental initiative that's happening at the Eclipse Foundation, I think it bears a few moments of everyone's time to go through what we're doing and why we're doing it. So in May, we announced that the Eclipse Foundation is moving to Europe. And so I've been asked a bazillion times since then, so Mike, are you moving to Brussels? And know that I and the staff in Ottawa are going to be staying in Canada. But what we are really doing is we are making ourselves a European-based organization based in Brussels, which is the capital of Europe, under European law, and operating as a European entity. And we're doing this to help grow the worldwide Eclipse ecosystem and attract and advance more strategic open source projects with a global impact. And so, you know, we really see this as being an opportunity to differentiate the Eclipse Foundation and help us grow. There is a need for more international collaboration and innovation. Open source is absolutely critical to the global open source supply chain that's driving innovation around the world today. There's a number of strategic initiatives in Europe around digital competition, competitiveness, independence, sovereignty, citizen privacy, and the like, all of which have open source as a central part of those initiatives. And so Europe really requires an open source foundation with international reach and reputation, and we are striving to help meet that requirement. So as a European-based organization headquartered in Brussels, the Eclipse Foundation AISBL, we think is going to be uniquely positioned to help leverage the growth of our community and help foster global collaboration. We're looking at expanding our footprint into places like cloud, edge computing, AI, and so on. Some of these we've been in before, but doing so in a larger and more strategically supported way. So this is all about growth and acceleration of our growth. You know, as I just mentioned, just on the revenue side, we are seeing significant growth, but we think we can have an even larger impact by virtue of this move to Europe. Which begs the question, you know, what got you here? And I think part of it, I've told this story quite a few times. You know, we had a board meeting last October. I was challenged as the executive director to take a look at why the Eclipse Foundation was doing so well in Europe and figure out ways to do even more. And it turned out when we ran the numbers that 70% of our paying members and 70% of our committers are based in Europe. 1/3 of our headcount is already based in Europe. And those three numbers, when you combine them in terms of our paying members, our committers, our staff, we already are the largest open source foundation in Europe. We've been operating a subsidiary in Europe for 7 years, so we understand what it takes to run a business in Europe. And Philipp is going to be talking later about our European research programs. We're successful and well regarded in that area. So we've already got, you know, significant relationships with European policymakers and decision makers. As I said in the previous slide, Europe requires an open source foundation of international reach and reputation, and we want to be that organization. And it's important to recognize that this transition to Europe has been backed unanimously by the strategic members of the foundation. So every one of the strategic members that make up the bulk of our board of directors, the ones that are paying significant amount of funds and investing the most in terms of headcount and support of the Eclipse Foundation's community, they are unanimous in their support of this initiative. So what are we doing? It's been a lot of work, so we've filed to create a new Belgian international nonprofit. Those documents were filed back in August. As part of that, we created new bylaws and membership agreement. It's important to note that these bylaws also state that we are going to continue to comply with the nonprofit requirements of the United States as well. So we are basically, as a nonprofit, we are going to meet the legal and statutory requirements of both the US and Belgium as we continue to operate. And so that's partially because we want to, over time, transfer most of the assets out of the US entity into the into the Belgian entity. So unfortunately, we are now in a waiting mode. So we filed back in August, and the process in Belgium is they issue what's called a royal decree creating us as a nonprofit organization. Things are lagging a little bit in the Belgian government process because of COVID, and also they had a change of government, so things are taking a little longer, but hopefully soon we will be fully operational. In addition to that, we've also had to make a number of changes to align the Eclipse Foundation US, changes to the bylaws and membership agreement, which were approved by the membership at large. And that's all been taken care of now, and those new bylaws and membership agreement are active. And as soon as we get the royal decree and we become operational, we're going to be asking our members to transition from US to Belgium. So what you are going to be asked to do is execute a new membership agreement. If your organization are participating in any of our working groups, we will need to execute new participation agreements. And there's been revisions to our committer and contribution agreements. And so that will be, those will be done as well. Note that we're going to make sure that the change in membership won't change the anniversary of your membership. And so we're not going to be changing when your membership fees are due. But speaking of fees, it's important to recognize that we are going to be, we have changed our fees. These became effective October 1st. The most important thing is what we've done is restated our fees from US dollars to euros. For the first year, those fees will be discounted by 10% for existing members, thus allowing a transition year over year because of the exchange rate difference between the dollar and the euro. Both the US and Belgium will have an identical fee structure. And it's also important to note that although we're changing our membership fees, the working groups each continue to establish their own fee structure and will continue to operate in US dollars unless they choose themselves to revisit their fee structure and move to euros. The fees and the budget for each working group was within the discretion of that working group steering committee. So I anticipate that some will change over time, but that's not a requirement being driven by our transition to Europe. And it's also important to note this is the first time we've had a fee increase since 2006. But it's most of the reason why we did this was really, if we're going to be a European-based organization, stating our fees in euros definitely makes the most sense. We also changed our classes a little bit. So we used to have two classes of strategic members, strategic developer and consumer. We've collapsed those into a single class. We got rid of our enterprise class of membership and we renamed solutions member to contributing, basically because it's a more descriptive name for that class of membership. And so that's those changes were also approved when we approved the bylaws and the membership agreement. Going forward, one of the changes that's going to be happening as a result of basically a difference in law between the US and Belgium is that the General Assembly, which we've previously called the membership at large, has additional rights and responsibilities. So if we want to change the bylaws or the membership agreement, they have to be approved. That's not new. That's the way it's always been. But the General Assembly needs to approve the budget, the auditor, the acceptance of the audited financial statements, and ratify the appointments of board members. So all of those are new. And what that means is we anticipate that we're going to have more meetings of the General Assembly. We're going to feel this out as we go. We anticipate having at least two members meetings rather than the one that we have. We will require people to vote more often. Votes of our membership have been generally relatively rare. And in this case, we're going to, so this will have to happen more often. But electronic votes will be encouraged for those who cannot actually attend the meeting. So what's not changing? The governance structure is essentially the same. So we still have elected representatives for committers and contributing members. We've transitioned the board as is until elections are held in 2021. And the board and its committees, basically remain exactly the same as they have been over the years. We've done a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that our projects and working groups are not affected by these changes. The Architecture Council, the EMO, et cetera, all remain the same. All the core policies remain the same. There's been some recent updates to those, the IP policy and antitrust policy. these policies will be shared word for word identical between the US and the Belgian organization. And that's really what's allowing sort of this seamless collaboration across both sides as we transition our membership. And all of the Eclipse Foundation staff remain in place, largely in Canada and throughout Europe. That's going to continue, although of course we do expect to see greater headcount growth in Europe over time. And with that, I thank you. I could, what are we doing with questions, Paul?
There's time for a question or two, Mike, if people do have questions. There was one asked why we.
Maybe you stop sharing, and as you answer your question, I start sharing my screen.
Perfect. All right. So why Belgium? That's a good question. So we did actually look at options, and particularly we evaluated Switzerland, Switzerland and Germany, both which have a construct called Verein, and we also looked at the Belgian one. And we decided on the Belgian one largely because they had recently created a very specific new type of organization called an international nonprofit association, and it was effectively an exact fit for what we were trying to do. And so that was when we started off this exercise. Gaël could reinforce this because he was the one who actually found this and pointed me at it. I was completely expecting that we would end up being a German Verein. The other reason, of course, is that in Europe, Brussels is the capital and Belgium is considered sort of the neutral home of Europe. Whereas if we'd been a German entity or a French entity, there's always that sort of European, well, you're European, but you're German, as opposed to by legally domiciling in Belgium, it's clear that we are a truly European organization. And I think that's
the only question in the chat. So just to mention again that we will be, once we get this final approval from the government, we'll be reaching out to each of our members and asking you to make the migration here from having your membership with the US organization to your membership with the Belgian organization. So we'll walk you through it. We'll give you the details of what's required. And if, I'm sure many of your organizations will have questions, either legal or otherwise, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go through it. And we appreciate everybody's support in trying to make this transition work. It will take a few months for us to get through it with all of the 300+ members that we have, but we'll do it as efficiently as we can and share information as we go to make the process easier for those who come behind.
So Michael Manella just asked a question about the timeline. It's basically as soon as we get the royal decree, we're going to be starting to approach members to transition their membership agreements, largely based on their renewal dates. So obviously we don't have the administrative staff to do everybody at once. So it'll be a process, but as soon as we get the royal decree, we will be starting to approach members to transition their membership.
And when do we get the royal decree? That's up to the government. Who knows? It's
a black box of bureaucracy at the moment.
Yes, sir. All right, Mike, thank you very much for the update. It's appreciated, and hopefully that's useful for folks. Again, reach out if you have questions after this. I know this is a lot of moving pieces from a governance point of view, but it's steady as she goes in the projects and working groups. So thanks again. I'll turn it over to Gaël. It's all yours.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Mike. So yeah, so my piece in this presentation is about ecosystem development, and you certainly heard Mike previously saying that the community is the capacity, and I want to emphasize on this message today because we can only do so much, and if you as members and our larger community can help us spread the word about this move to Europe, about some of the ambitions I will present in a few minutes. That's where we can as a community be more efficient. And the second message also is I changed a bit this slide that is about our tagline to emphasize on the code first part, is that we are always recruiting new projects, and because we know that with new projects we also get we manage to grow the community and we manage to have more members. But I would say that now more than ever we also need new projects and new exciting projects. So we certainly that we are involved in those main focus areas. So cloud native Java, IoT and edge computing, automotive, tools. Also one important thing is that Eclipse projects are not restricted to those areas, and we already have projects in other domains. The main criteria to be an Eclipse project is to really want to comply with our values of transparency, openness, and meritocracy, to work according to the Eclipse development process and to follow our policies. So we are still looking for projects in those domains, and we are also working on new prospective areas, especially I would say artificial intelligence and cloud. And we have specific actions. So I'm dedicating most of my time these days to work in those domains. And we just onboarded a new contractor, to Mark Vromans as a new contractor to work with me on these domains. And we think that that's domains where open source plays a big role, and also domains for which it's important to have well-managed open source communities. And that's where we make the difference with just pushing your code on GitHub. We have all the processes that makes a good open source governance. That's also domains where Europe wants to invest, and domains that are also, of course, important for the rest of the world. So that typically fit very well in what Mike just described, that being a leading open source foundation with established in Europe. So my message is that we have a good model of collaboration. We need your help to recruit new members and projects. We can spend time with you to convince management about the interest of open source for collaboration, to share our experiences and success stories. And I think that Thabang will come back to that. We have started documenting success stories and use cases that are, in my opinion, very good material for managers to take the decision to go in open source. Also, other potential domains where I'm interested in ideas, collaboration, in receiving your solicitation for help is space. So we are talking to the European Space Agency, and they should become a member very soon. Smart cities, privacy and cybersecurity, energy, e-government. So pick what you like and contact me, and I will coordinate the way we can work together. And with that, I think that I'm done with this part, but I'll be back because Philipp is not available today.
Thanks, Gaël. Any questions for Gaël before we move on?
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Gaël, it's Amanda.
Go ahead.
Hi, I've got a project that I think might be interested. Will you be sharing that deck with us or sharing something with us that we can pass on to projects?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. So we can certainly share the deck, and if you need additional information, or if there's anything that you think will help, Amanda, just reach out to Gaël, and we'll get you what you need. That would be great.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I do have a question, if you can hear me.
Yes, Besim, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are we generally we are interested in these areas that you mentioned, but if any project does not fall within this category, are we gonna reject them, or we see that as an opportunity?
No, they're all opportunities. We are absolutely technology omnivores.
I like that one. All right.
Yeah, we list these topics to bring some focus, but we are, as Mike says, we are omnivores, and we are here to support our members bring forward their projects. And if those projects are important to you, then they're important to us.
Yeah,
and I should have my camera on as well.
Yeah, so I have a bad habit of repeating myself once I find a line that I like. But we have 375 projects at the Eclipse Foundation, and if you focus on 375 things, you focus on nothing. So when we talk about these technology areas that we're particularly interested in, it's just because that's what we're interested. That's what our members are telling us that they are interested in, right? And honestly, Basim, you can change that in a heartbeat by bringing us some really cool new technology projects, and all of a sudden we'll be interested in that too. It's just simply a matter of having some framework by which we can focus our energies at the Eclipse Foundation, because we have limited resources and a lot of potential energy locked up in our projects. So that's how you should interpret that.
A great question, though, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Right, it is important that we don't lose sight of that fact that we do have 375 projects, and we are vested in ensuring all of them are successful. Actually,
so Bruno asked the question: will the European membership cancel the U.S. membership? How do both memberships will live together? So Bruno, it's when you become a member in Europe, you'll be asked to resign your membership in the U.S. So the intent is not that they coexist. It's a transition, but the coexistence will happen in the sense that for some period of time, we don't know exactly how long, for some period of time, we are going to have members that are in the US and some members in Belgium. And so that's the transition that we're referring to there.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, great questions. All right, thank you. Let's move on. Thabang, Mashologu, it will present to us what's going on the marketing side with Eclipse. Thabang, it's all yours.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Gaël and Mike. So I'll be walking folks through the work in progress and some of the highlights of our plans going forward. We recently launched a revamped membership section. So the membership pages have now been enhanced, if you will, to really focus on enunciating a value proposition, right? So why a prospective member should join, what are the key benefits and advantages of membership in the foundation, and also to simplify and improve user experience. So the idea and intent was to make it highly navigable and ensure that with a few clicks you'd be able to find the paperwork and understand the process for becoming a member. So that's a recent update that we've made to these pages. In the future, we will be enhancing the membership portal. So once you've become a member, providing ready access to key information about the projects that you're engaged in and also the contributions that you're making. So look out for those updates early in 2021. Similarly, we've improved and revamped our working groups page. So at this point in time, we have 13 working groups, and you're able to navigate to this page and see relevant information in the way of the working group charters, the participation agreements, everything that you need to know at a glance, or at least start exploring which working groups and which areas of collaboration you want to get more involved in. The working group concept is something that we consider a differentiator for us in terms of the governance model and the way it's applied to specific domains. So really what this is doing is highlighting those differentiators for folks in a way that's very well connected to the membership pages that we were just looking at previously. So one area of focus for us as an organization, and certainly for the marketing team, is delivering high quality intelligence, so market insights to our members and also to the broader industry and ecosystem. So we see this as a way of demonstrating thought leadership and also in the way of the detailed findings that are made available to our members, allowing you to take action and be aware of industry trends and the demand drivers, the requirements and priorities of developers in specific domains. So we recently launched the results of the IoT Developer Survey. And by the way, these assets are freely available to folks. If you go to your eclipse.org account, there's a document section that we've established that allows you to see all of the research and all of the rich content we're developing. And in addition to that, we've licensed them. So in the spirit of open source and particularly open source marketing, these are issued under a CC by 4 license. So any of our members can take and remix and consume and share these assets freely. Virtual events is certainly a big area of focus for us. In the few months since July alone, we've been able to reach and connect with a global community. A lot of folks that are even new to our ecosystem, over 3,500 folks we've been able to reach. And at EclipseCon alone, we had 2,700, just shy of 2,700 registrations. And we had over 1,300 folks that attended live. Really the focus here is, we talk about it as a pivot, an adjustment that we've made as a result of the pandemic, but frankly, the new normal is really oriented in terms of being able to support and communicate with and connect to our community wherever they are. So that's why we're really excited to have had the Jakarta One live stream in Brazil and Jakarta One in Espanol, essentially a set of events across our communities and ecosystems that are allowing people to connect during these times. Similarly, in terms of events, we've revamped our events portal, really with a focus of making it visually engaging and also enabling folks to find the events that are of interest to them and also to contribute events, to let us know about events. You can do that simply through the portal now. One of the focus areas for us, I think this is pretty strategic for us as an organization, and certainly for the marketing team, is highlighting our successes. We often talk about how this is the best part of our jobs, which is being able to share with the broader world the great things that our committers, contributors, people who are involved in the project, as well as our member organizations are doing. So to that end, we have our community newsletter that reaches over 300,000 subscribers. And we've created a featured committer series as part of that newsletter. And then Eclipse.org going forward is going to have a section of the real estate. The homepage is going to be dedicated to featured committers as well. The case studies are something that are relatively new, and we're going to be investing a lot of time in going forward, where we are highlighting and showing the commercial benefits, the business case, if you will, around and the return on investment around membership in the Eclipse community. We currently have completed about a half dozen of those. We're going to be rolling them out over the next few months. So with that, we've invited, as Paul mentioned earlier, we've invited Philipp Struss from Cedalo. Is Philipp on the line? Are you there, Philipp? Philipp?
I think I see him connected. Yep. Not, he's still muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Hi. Yeah,
Hi.
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so thanks for joining, Philipp. Yeah, so maybe I can just tee it up for folks. So Philipp and his team generously participated in a case study for us that we're going to be launching shortly. Philipp, can you just briefly walk us through, you know, the story of Cedalo's involvement in the foundation and your experience even with this case study?
Yes, of course, I'd love to. And also if there are other questions, then later on, please feel free to ask me, basically. So we're Cedalo, a German-based software company, and we joined the Eclipse Foundation a little over a year ago and are actually driving two projects. So one is a well-known project or better-known project, that's the Mosquito Broker. So we brought on also Roger into the team and are driving now the development of the Mosquito Broker, so to say, and another project that we brought into Eclipse when we joined basically is Streamsheets. And the Mosquito Broker is an MQTT broker, and Streamsheets is, so to say, an application development platform for data streams, like, for example, via MQTT, that's absolutely code-free to build applications there. And we joined, as I said, roughly a year ago, mainly with the goal of actually bringing those projects closer together, Streamsheets and Mosquito. So it made a lot of sense to also provide Streamsheets in an open source fashion, in an open source way, in the same with the same license, for example, so that it's a very smooth environment, a very smooth transition, so to say, from Mosquito, or not necessarily transition, but of using Mosquito as well as Streamsheets, and tying these two together. And that was like one of the benefits, and then another one is definitely many connections and relationships that we could build, especially within the community. So with other folks and other projects, for example. So one guy I actually meet or talk to regularly is Kilton from Edgeworks, from IO Fork. And a couple of times we could already show also at the IoT or the Edge Native Day, for example, as well as in other calls, so to say, how those two work actually quite nicely together, or how all three projects even work together. So it's really nice then to build connections and use cases there, as well as then, for example, that people from the community, they like using different projects and show how it's combined. And from there, we also got a lot of feedback, and then not only on Mosquito, but especially also in Streamsheets around, for example, what would be nice if it had it, what doesn't feel as smooth as it should be, and then really getting a feedback on the technical side, as well as, for example, on the use case side. So that feedback was quite valuable for us. And then another thing that definitely helps us, so to have here a little bit of perspective of the business perspective and what it actually brings, is, I mean, there's a lot of open source software out there, and it's really one of the big trends, I'd almost say. So what we see is a huge boom, but the thing behind it is actually, if you're selling it and if you're providing it to other companies, they typically they want to be able to trust you and have trust in that. So one problem or one big question is always, well, is it really open source? Are you sure it is? Because obviously you have so many dependencies and other things that you're using. But the nice thing about that is, if you're essentially wearing the Eclipse brand, they can be sure that it's been properly checked, also by another authority or by a real authority on open source, so to say. So you have like a huge trust boost in that these other people and companies, they can be sure that it's working properly and it's a proper open source project. And then you can actually use this trust to build upon that and have already a different standing, so to say. So that definitely helps, because obviously, as we all know, with open source, you're giving away control essentially over what you're doing, what you're passionate about, what you're developing, and also how people are using it. But on the other side, you're actually getting much more visibility in the community, in the market, or in your market typically, as well as this trust boost, I'd say. And that it comes especially not only by making it open source, but it comes with the brand of Eclipse. These, I'd say, like the main benefits that we've gained and are gaining from it, actually, from our participation.
Well, that's wonderful, Philip. Thanks for sharing that, and also thanks for participating in this case study.
Sure, my pleasure.
In fact, I'd like to invite everyone on this call and everyone who's going to watch this thereafter. If you want to participate in one of these case studies, if you want to share the successes and lessons learned through your involvement in our ecosystem, please reach out to either myself or marketing@eclipse.org, and we'd love to work with you. Thanks, Philip.
Sure, my pleasure.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Thank you, Philip. That's fantastic. So, and to Thabang and the marketing team, I really do think these are powerful on our behalf, but certainly, hopefully, they're useful for our members in echoing, the messaging they're trying to get out. So,
yeah, actually, on that point, CC by 4 as well. So, Philipp and others, once these get written up, everyone is free to use them and share them. So we're doing open source marketing as well.
Brilliant.
Right on. Any questions before we move on for either Thabang or Philip? All right. Well, our next speaker will be Wayne Beaton, who, with these meetings, Wayne tends to be the last speaker, which is never fair. So he's not the last speaker today. So that's one thing that we've been able to change here. So Wayne, it's all you. Can you give us an update on what's happening with the projects?
Well, I assume everyone can see my screen. I'd just talk a little bit about what's happening in the project, the open source project space. And I've traditionally presented the IDE simultaneous release stats, and it occurs to me just, I guess, a little too late that I should be doing this for our entire project space. So I promise to do that for next time. We do have continued healthy investment in our in the IDE, and continued increasing investment in all of our other projects. Again, I apologize that I've included the wrong chart. We have had a handful of new proposals over the last quarter. This is just just a taste of some of them. Certainly, we have a handful of projects in the automotive space. Jakarta continues to be an interesting area of investment, and of course IoT continues to attract new and interesting projects, and these projects all sit in those spaces. We have over the last quarter, we've had investment from these companies here. This just a bit of an eye chart showing you some of the logos of companies that are actively investing in our open source projects. I wanted to use the bulk of my time to talk about some work that we've been doing with the IP policy and process modernization. This is something we've been working on for a little while, and I just wanted to make sure that people are aware. And I know, of course, that we have a lot of committers on the call. Committers are members as well. So I thought I'd spend a few minutes just talking about some things that affect them directly. We engage in a process of updating our IP policy, and I put just sort of this spectrum chart, and of course not to scale, but the idea is, we have a pretty rigorous intellectual property management process and policy, and we're pretty far to the right of this scale, and what we're doing is we're trying to make this more approachable for our committers and the people who are doing work on our open source projects, and kind of bringing things back a little bit. And I just wanted to make sure that people are aware that we still believe that where we are moving to, and where we've moved to, is still pretty high on this scale, pretty far to the right here on this scale rigor and quality and investment in our process. Again, which is more, it's about adapting to what the rest of the world is doing, but still doing a better job than the rest of the world. Our third-party due diligence process has, there's an opportunity here, and this looks more complicated than it is. The gist of it is that we now have committers have the ability to, or are the main keepers of what are dependencies, what content is being used by our projects. And very often we can get that kind of information from a build. What we've done is we've built a tool that will scan a list of dependencies extracted from a project, and from that determine what needs to be investigated further. In the past, we've required that projects engage with the IP team for every single bit of content that they use. What this allows us to do is determine what content needs to actually be reviewed and have our IP team work with the project team in focusing on only that content that actually needs review. So the line labeled 3 here, we pass this information to the IP team. The IP team does their magic, interacting with the project team. They update our sources of data. And one of the sources of data that we've started to depend on is an OSI project called Clearly Defined, which is crowdsourcing intellectual property data, copyright and license data. So we're leveraging this source of information. The net result is that committers need to engage with the IP team less frequently now. We're turning our eye now to the tools that are being used for this. So a little bit more about that later. Just adding some color to the discussion. Many of the build systems that our projects use actually have an ability to tell you what the dependencies are. So for example, Maven can tell you what the dependencies are. So rather than having committers engage with every single thing, we can leverage this. The dependency list, we feed this through our system, and it queries the sources of information that we have and determines in this particular case that we have vetted information and the project team needs to do no more work. I have a link here, and I published this link in all sorts of different places, but it's a GitHub project under the Eclipse organization called Dash Licenses. And again, this project is a tool that our committers are now using to determine what dependencies they have need to be vetted by our process. Just quickly, we've been working with the Clearly Defined people. We've engaged with their technical team to work out, well, obviously technical issues. We've also engaged with their curation team to participate in the process of curating content as a contributor to that process. We do curate a lot of information for them. The entry point into Clearly Defined is an ID. Here's an example of an ID of some content that exists on Maven Central. This uniquely identifies a very specific piece of intellectual property. This is an important key into the overall process. For those people on the call that are familiar with Maven group artifact IDs and version numbers, this should look familiar. And of course, those map to Clearly Defined by also including source information. Where is this information actually found? In this case, this is an example of something that's on Maven Central. The intellectual property due diligence process for project code will remain unchanged for the foreseeable future. Basically, project teams present their initial contribution and significant contributions of project content to the IP team for their review, and the IP team has a process again where they work with the project team to validate the provenance and licensing information and just generally look for anomalies in content that goes into our projects. We apply an extremely high standard to the content that goes into Eclipse projects, and we believe that everybody benefits from that. So where we are on this timeline, getting really quite close to the end. We've been working on this. I've been working on this since we announced the initial effort into EclipseCon 2018. We got board of directors approval a year ago, and been working pretty hard to roll this out. I've been working with projects more on a one-on-one basis as they connect with us to do releases. We've been working through their intellectual property and introducing them to the new process, and of course working with the Architecture Council and other and directly with projects through the process. We are at the point now where we're starting to look at how we use our tools. Right now we have something called IPZilla that we use for intellectual property vetting. And we're starting to take a strong look at what the eventual replacement for our IPZilla system is. And so hopefully I'll have some news to report on that shortly. Unfortunately, I don't at this point. And with that, I'm just going to take a quick check for questions, because that is the extent of my comments.
Yeah,
all right, I will turn things back over to Paul.
Yep, that's great. Thanks very much. Certainly lots happening, trying to improve our processes. Feedback is welcome. Any thoughts, reach out to Wayne and team.
Yeah, if I could add, please, if there are comments or questions or concerns, emo@eclipse.org is the easiest and best way to get a hold of me.
Yep, terrific. All right, I'm going to turn it over next to Paul Buck, who is our Vice President of Community Development, and as part of his responsibilities, so he oversees all the work that's going on in the working groups. So Paul, take it away.
Yes, thanks. Thank you very much, Paul. So Eclipse working groups are a big part of what we do, and both Mike and Thabang made mention of that. Currently, there are 14 working groups at the Eclipse Foundation, and so far this year in 2020, we've launched 5 new working groups. That's Eclipse Native, our Edge Native, Sparkplug, Tangle EE, ASCII Doc, and the Microprofile Working Group. There's also work underway to create 2 new working groups. In October, the OSGI Alliance announced that they're moving their specifications to the Eclipse Foundation. And in June, Adopt OpenJDK announced that they were coming to the Eclipse Foundation to carry on their work to deliver high quality Java SE runtimes. At the Eclipse Foundation, we have a working group process. And within that process, there's a life cycle. And as you can imagine, these working groups progress from one phase of the life cycle to the next. And currently, we have all of our working groups in operational, in active state, except one. We have 6 in the incubation phase, 7 in the operational phase, and 1 in the proposal phase that is poised to become active shortly. So a lot of activity in these working groups and a lot of focus on making sure that membership value is delivered through the collaboration that companies and organizations have in mind when they join a working group or when they form a working group. Each one of these working groups has a charter and a participation agreement for members to sign, join, and start participating. To learn more about the working groups at the Eclipse Foundation, I encourage you to visit the Explore Working Groups page on the Foundation website, which Thabang mentioned earlier in the presentation. Membership participation. There's currently over 100 members collaborating in working groups at the Eclipse Foundation. Some members are active in more than one working group, so that's not uncommon. All working group members are also, of course, members of the Eclipse Foundation, and working group steering committees also have the privilege of inviting guests to join working groups, and that's usually for nonprofit or academic institutions to also become members of a working group in a non-voting capacity. projects, open source projects, the core of what we do at Eclipse, can be associated with one or any number of working groups. Open source projects are independent and function according to the governance defined in the Eclipse development process. And currently there are over 130 projects affiliated with working groups. Working groups allow companies and organizations to coordinate their activity in open source projects and support them through marketing initiatives and other important activities. New with Jakarta EE, the Jakarta EE working group, working groups now also do specifications. With the direction to move Java EE to Jakarta EE, which got underway in 2017, the Eclipse Foundation developed the Eclipse Foundation Specification Process, or the EFSP. The EFSP is an open specification process that's based on open source and public APIs and public documents. Everything is done in the open, and compatibility test suites that are available under an open license. Supporting this is a compatibility program. And each specification-based working group can have its own compatibility program. And I'm pleased to say with Jakarta, we've got 9 products from 9 different companies that are on the compatibility products page today. So this EFSP and compatibility program, although it got underway recently, has been quite a success under Jakarta, which delivered its original EE8 release in June and is poised to deliver the EE9 release in December. So we've proven out the EFSP and the compatibility branding program with the Jakarta EE working group. We've since launched 3 other specification-based working groups: Sparkplug in the MQTT space, ASCII-Doc in the documentation space, and more recently, MicroProfile, cloud-based microservices and standards based on individual specifications leading towards a platform. So we're very excited about the work we've done with member companies in the specification space, and are very interested in new working groups of all kinds in all areas, and including those that are specification based. So a lot of activity in working groups in the Eclipse Foundation. Stay tuned. There's no doubt will be more, and many of those members that you saw early on in this presentation, that in Mike's portion, joined the Eclipse Foundation to be part of these working groups. So thank you very much. Next, it's over to Philipp, unless there's some questions.
Yeah, are there any questions for Paul? Thank you, Paul. Certainly, as Paul says, you know, we have over 100 members now involved in these. We see about 2/3 of our new members who are joining specifically to join a working group. So you know, we know this is of value to our members. I guess the one thing to add is, if you are interested in you know, creating a working group or driving an industry initiative in this way, just reach out to Paul or myself or Mike or Gaël, any of our team, and we'd be happy to discuss with you the process, what's involved, and get engaged with you. We're here to support the efforts. All right, if no questions, thanks again, Paul. Gaël, I believe you're going to substitute for Philipp in this and give us an update on what's happening.
Yes. For those of you who know Philipp, then you will be disappointed to see my face, but yeah, he's in a research project meeting now. So I'm happily covering for him. So yeah, few words about research projects. So first of all, we started to do research projects in Europe in 2013, and I think that was one of the main reasons why we created the Eclipse Foundation Europe GmbH at that time. The idea behind doing behind our involvement in research projects is that in this collaboration triangle, you have the large industries that come with requirements. You have researchers that innovate and create prototypes, and software vendor or specialized SMEs who industrialize those prototypes and create products. That's of course an ideal vision, and everybody in a research project is supposed to work on a shared platform. And we think that, and we have been working on that for the last 7 years now, we think that open source is a good way to serve as a catalyst for this open platform and to really be the meeting point of all the partners of a project. So we have participated in, I think, more than 10 projects with this very specific value proposition, which is to provide sustainability for research results. So basically the idea is that the European Commission has been claiming that research projects should do open source for a long time. Of course, not everything has to be open source, and not all research projects should do open source. But when you create a proposal and say that you will do some open source, then that creates good perception. But in reality, lots of research projects have not implemented it very well. I used to say as a joke that if you push some code on GitHub the week before the final review of your project, you cannot claim that you have done open source. So what we do is that from the beginning, we start educating the consortium regarding to how an open source ecosystem works. We start working with them so that they can publish their first results in open source as soon as possible, and they participate to our events. We promote them in the newsletter, and the goal is to have a chance during the typical 3 years of a project. You create a research prototype, a first research prototype in the first year, and then you publish it in open source, and you have something like 2 years to have a chance to really create a community around it, and to start working in the open with open collaboration best practices. So that's what we have done for a long time. And this is the portfolio of projects in which we are involved. So some of them are typically success stories. Typically, Cuxa is in the domain of the connected car with car to infrastructure communication, car to car communication, this kind of stuff. And that's an Eclipse project that was the result of an ITR project called App4MC with Bosch and Ericsson and others, of course. And that's really the kind of examples that we try to reproduce in all the other projects. So some projects are more specifically focused on one of our focus areas like IoT or tools. Other projects are more cross domain, like between modeling and automotive, for example, or IoT and tools. And yeah, we really have this dedicated team, and over the time we have developed specific artifacts to help the research project. And the message today in this the message today in this member meeting is that we want you to subscribe to this Eclipse research mailing list. There's not lots of traffic, so you can safely subscribe, and we want at some point to make it a channel where we start collaborating on research proposition, research projects. Also, promote your best EU research project as Eclipse projects. We have several collaboration with research projects in which we were not partners. One good example is Eclipse Steady, for example, which is a result of the Sparta project that's in the domain of security. And Eclipse Steady was a project from SAP Research. And that's now an Eclipse project focusing on dependency analysis and sending messages to the developers that they should fix their dependency because there are security issues, this kind of stuff. So we are also, beyond being involved in projects, we also take the mission of helping existing research projects promote their results as Eclipse projects. And the last message is there will soon be the race for Horizon Europe funding. And so onboard us in your Horizon Europe or other EU research project proposal. We are here to help, and I think we do a good job in helping research project consortia. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you. Philippe will be proud of the message you've delivered. So, are there any questions for Gaël on the topic of research? It is an area that we continue to grow and invest in. So, on behalf of our members.
Good.
Thank you, Gaël. We appreciate it. All right, Denis. Denis is going to give us an update on what's happening on the IT side, just a few hints on some of the major initiatives that we have on the go, and take it over to you. Yep, you're all good. Yep, we can. You're good.
Right, thanks, Paul. So the big news for the infrastructure this year is the installation and the deployment of the GitLab Enterprise software suite. It's a modern, full-featured Git repository, code review tool. It features issues, wikis, web pages, all with a very tight integration into one software package. This is a stark contrast at the Bugzilla and MediaWiki and Pure Git and Gerrit packages that we've been running now very successfully for many, many years. However, some of the development has stalled on some of those packages, notably Bugzilla. So GitLab really breathes a breath of fresh air into the infrastructure. GitLab is available today for usage for new Eclipse projects. And existing projects who are using Bugzilla and Gerrit can migrate over to GitLab effective immediately. All you need to do is file a GitLab issue. It's over on gitlab.eclipse.org. But that's not all. We kind of took stock in the infrastructure this year, and we noticed that the Ottawa server infrastructure is quite far from a lot of our developers, most of which are found on the European side. So not only did we deploy GitLab, but we also deployed it on a brand new European infrastructure. It's located in Switzerland. It's based on a virtual data center platform that we've been using successfully now. And GitLab is running there with the same high performance and load balanced setup that Eclipse.org has been using successfully for many, many years. Currently, the new European infrastructure only supports GitLab, so that's all that's there. We're eventually going to leverage the European presence for much more, including disaster recovery, backup, and eventually, hopefully, perhaps some geographical intelligence to our website so that our European and Asian users don't always have to cross an ocean to come and visit our web properties. That would be really nice. It is noteworthy though that our CI system, which is not the GitLab CI system, so it's a CI system that is based on Jenkins. It is located in Ottawa, and it will remain so for the foreseeable future. The other big part that I wanted to talk about with the infrastructure is we continue to see our Jenkins-based CI system as a huge value for our projects and for our members as well. It's based on Kubernetes, so we have a lot of compute power behind this build cluster. It's currently being used by over 250 of the Eclipse projects. As a reminder, we have about 375 projects or more. So it's very widely used, and it's very flexible and it's very capable. And this year we've made it a lot easier to connect external build agents to the Kubernetes cluster. So projects that need to interface with other platforms that we can't possibly support at the Eclipse Foundation, including Mac of different flavors, AIX, HP Unix, or some of the older Unixes. Those can be integrated into the Jenkins platform quite easily with the help of the Eclipse release engineering team. Paul, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Denis. Before I jump in, are there questions here for Denis or what we're doing on the infrastructure side?
Bottom here, I posted a question in chat, but I think I'm just going to repeat it here. Yep. Now, we have noticed a lot of the CI migrations, at least not within the Eclipse, but generally have been towards GitHub Actions and GitLab CI because they're so easy to get started with, so intuitive. And if I understood correctly, we have this new infrastructure, which is GitLab, and we have a form of Kubernetes Jenkins running somewhere. But do we have the GitLab and its CI as a form available too? So the runners, as a matter of fact.
So we have the runners are part of GitLab. We've turned them off simply because we don't know what it means to turn them on. So it doesn't mean that we'll have them off indefinitely. It might be an option to turn them on for some of the smaller projects. Certainly the infrastructure that we have in Switzerland, it does not have the same scale as what we have in Ottawa. In Ottawa, I think we have close to 500 CPU processors that are available for build. And we don't have that yet in Switzerland, and I don't know if we ever will. So we just don't know. It may be an option.
Okay, can I follow up on that question with another question? I'm pretty sure the time is not on my side, but I have to ask this, and I'm sorry if I'm naive, but generally looking at the GitLab that we have and the GitHub accounts that we have, I'm not quite sure where projects should be hosted as right now. Could you clarify that?
Where do you want to host them?
Going to say
wherever it's easier to work with. That's my
sorry. No, well, we are offering choices, and obviously, whenever you have choices, and it's particularly when it comes to technology, you have to select them based on the merits. So it depends on your use cases. For example, some people are very attracted to the notion of having their servers hosted in Switzerland or Europe, right? Others are more interested in attracting developers on GitHub because they know there's a lot of developers there. So I mean, there's no one right answer. It's a series of technical and sort of socio-political trade-offs that each project has to make when they make their decision.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, we certainly wouldn't want to dictate which way you have to go with it. So we can certainly work with folks if we can answer questions about the implications of choices, but ultimately it's the project's choice. So. All right, in the interest of time, and look, thank you everyone especially for those of you who hung in for the entire almost hour and a half that we've been at this. It's really appreciated. You know, I think the theme here is that, and Mike mentioned this, that we've grown, our revenues have grown a little bit, but our initiatives, what we're trying to do, have evolved significantly over the last few years, and we continue to evolve. And hopefully we're heading in the right direction, and we're meeting the needs of our members. That's what we are here to serve, our membership. The things that we do are trying to enable you to achieve your goals, for your open source projects to be successful, and for your industry initiatives to also be successful. So ultimately, that's how we measure our success. I will quote Mike, who says, "Feedback is the breakfast of champions," right? We welcome feedback, both constructive feedback, whether it's positive or negative, but please let us know how we're doing with these initiatives, whether we're on track, or if you have suggestions on other things that we can do. We are certainly open to new ideas. But you know, we're excited. We're pleased to be doing this. It's been an interesting year with COVID, a challenge for all of us. You know, it's been major disruption for our own operations, as it has been for virtually every company around the world. But hopefully we have not skipped a beat in terms of the delivering on the services that we commit to. I'll open for, you know, one last shot at questions if anyone has any. It's an open mic.
Oh, so
yeah,
Mike,
what are the challenges?
Well, actually, I would say basically our challenge right now is a lot of it is just execution. So execute on transitioning our move to Europe, execute on all the initiatives that we have on our plate, and doing that while being very conservative on our growth, and so on, because you know, we are being cautious as we look into 2021 in terms of, you know, what we think the growth is going to look like. There's a lot of, as you know, there's a lot of open questions about where the economy is going to be going. So far, 2020 has been a banner year for our growth, but I think we have to be pretty cautious looking forward. So it's really, I think it's really execution. We have a lot of things on the go. We have a steady a really interesting pipeline of new things that are coming down the pipe, and so keeping our team going and motivated, and executing on what's on our plate. No, fortunately, the community is the capacity. So, you know, we have the ability to leverage our community for a lot of things, and that we wouldn't be able to accomplish a fraction of what we do if we were a normal organization. But yeah, anyways, that's what I see as the main challenge is execution on everything that's on our plate, while you know, counting our shekels carefully as we go forward.
Yeah, I would add, you know, we are evolving. We're trying to do new things, new initiatives. You know, Thabang spoke to a number of new initiatives. Wayne spoke to them. Paul Buck talked about some of the new things that we're doing. As part of taking on new things, what we try to do is gracefully grandfather out or terminate some things that aren't adding as much value. And so, you know, I would add that that's a challenge for us as we try to sunset certain services. We want to make sure that we don't negatively impact folks. And so, you know, again, we'll try to work with folks as we do that, and have it not be disruptive. But that's certainly one of the challenges that we keep our eye on, that we don't disrupt in a negative way.
All right, and with that, I think it's a wrap. I think this has been a great hour and a half. So thank you, Paul, for hosting and emceeing the event. Thank you all for attending. For those that are watching this later in a recording, thank you for taking the time and initiative to learn more about the Eclipse Foundation. It's been 2020 has been an incredible year, and looking forward to 2021. And so with that, thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.